I guess I should start by saying why I think this movie is going to win 3 or 4 Oscars, and it's not because of the things you think a movie usually wins for. You know, great story, great directing, great cinematography. No, it's not going to win for any of those reasons. None of those apply to this movie. I think this movie is going to win a bunch of Oscars as part of a larger effort to destigmatize, legitimize, and normalize the sexualization of children. And this goes right along with the rise of maps. If you don't know what they are, lucky you, but you need to look it up and find out for yourself. And let's not forget it was just 2 weeks ago that California weakened laws against P. Yes, I have to use a euphemism, otherwise I'll have to redo this video again. Why do I think this is the case? I noticed while reading interviews with the director that her stories about the making of this movie have changed over time, sometimes quite a bit. For instance, she used to say that kids this age are really unpredictable and you can't treat them like you would an adult. And to get around this, she said she didn't even give them a script. Instead, she treated it like a game. Each child was told to pretend they were an animal. For instance, the lead actress was told to pretend that she was a cat. Some days she was a cat, some days she was a panther, and some days she was a kitten. And instead of giving them the script, they would play out the story a little bit at a time, day by day. But when she tells the story now, she wants us to think that she was having these deep, in-depth discussions with these little girls about the hypersexualization and objectification of young children, and that these little girls became activists along with her and their parents. How did they go from being cats and kittens to being activists? Now, why would the story change so radically? I think it's a part of an effort by Netflix, the director, and now film critics to reframe this movie from what it is into what they want you to think it is. They want you to think it's an activist film, that it's a feminist film. And part of their strategy is to paint anybody who is a critic of this film as either a pervert or a member of a vast right-wing conspiracy. Just look at some of these headlines, or check out this article on Jezebel where they accuse Representative Tulsi Gabbard of peddling conspiracy theories. But when you look at the actual tweet, you can see just how dishonest this headline is, and unless Jezebel really believes that this is just a right-wing conspiracy theory. So you have to wonder why so many people are so angry, so willing to defend this movie, and so willing to smear anybody who criticizes it. And like I said earlier, I think this is part of a campaign to legitimize, destigmatize, and normalize the sexualization of children. And what better way to do that than to throw a bunch of Oscars at it? So I think it's going to be nominated for 6 or 7 Oscars, and I think it's going to win 3, maybe 4. I think it'll get nominations for Best Picture, Best Foreign Film, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Original Screenplay, Best Costume Design, and they'll probably make up one for Best Choreography. And I think it's going to win Best Foreign Film, Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and maybe Best Actress for the little girl. So you could give her 10 Oscars and it won't make up for the way she's been mistreated. Now I want to talk about the insane number of kids they auditioned for this movie. The number changes from article to article, but this one here, she says herself, 700. 700 little girls. This is not even close to normal. This is insane. And it gets even worse when you realize what these girls were doing, dancing around in front of the director, the movie's producer, this man, and I assume the casting director. But it gets even worse than that because they filmed all of them. All 700 of these little girls. And on top of that, because this is an audition for a movie, they have to have their names, addresses, and phone numbers in case they need to contact them. And because it can never stop getting worse, there are hours and hours of unused footage from when they made the movie. And because there's always one rung lower you can go, in some of the old articles she mentions that she would film some of her interviews with girls. Random girls she met on the street or met in the parks. And she would ask them questions like, why are you dressed so provocatively? Do you dance around provocatively? Do you film it? And do you post it online? So these folks have a massive amount of footage of hundreds of underage girls, most of it shot in 4K, and all of it unaccounted for. Now, I know we can't get rid of the movie, but somebody from the French government needs to find this footage and destroy it as soon as possible. I also want to bring up the fact that she says in France they're going to use her film as an educational tool. And I think that's creepy and wrong, but we can't do anything about what they do in France. But what you can do is if you have kids or you know somebody that has kids, you all need to talk to the teachers, the superintendent of the schools, the school board, and make sure that this is not being shown in class and it's not being assigned as homework. Let them know in no uncertain terms that this movie is unacceptable to you. Because you know there are teachers out there who will show this film to your kids. Now I'd like to further explain why I don't trust the people who are pushing this movie. They want us to believe that the purported theme of this movie, that we have over-sexualized the culture and we need to do something about this to protect the children. They're trying to convince us that this theme is so important that we need to overlook the fact that this movie actually sexualizes and exploits children. But there are 2 problems with this. I haven't seen the movie, but other people who have seen the movie say that if you hadn't been told what the theme of the movie was, you wouldn't know it from watching the movie. The movie ends after the talent show. The little girl cries, runs off stage, goes home, hugs her mother, changes clothes, goes outside and jumps rope. But here's the problem, because nobody explained to her the reason why people were booing at her. For all she knows, they were booing at her because she was a lousy dancer. So the real theme of the movie is when you face adversity, give up. So you know it really is a French film. And another reason I don't have any faith at all in the people who are pushing this film is that these are the same people who for the past month have been pushing WAP. Article after article for the past month telling us just how wonderful the song is, telling us just how empowering the video is. For instance, here's the website Vulture. They have run 2 articles praising this movie. But this is the same website that has run 13 articles over the past month praising WAP. These things are diametrically opposed. They're really trying to convince us that they are both for and against the hypersexualization of the culture. And this is why I don't believe them. And I also think this is one of the reasons why they're pushing the left versus right thing, trying to make any critic of this movie out to be a right-wing nut job, but that is easily disproven just by going to YouTube, where you find video after video from people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle, men, women, doesn't matter. They're all calling out this movie for being messed up and going too far. Now I'll end this video with a plea to the people who are pushing this movie. Please, for one moment, set aside your agenda and have some empathy for these children. These little girls are not even old enough to watch this movie, and they won't be for several more years. Think about what's going to happen to them when they're old enough to realize how they've been exploited by people who should have been protecting them instead. And they're going to have to deal with that. They're going to have to deal with it for the rest of their lives because this movie will follow them around for the rest of their lives. And I have to ask you all, was this movie worth it? The answer is no. No movie is more valuable than somebody's mental health, but somehow this doesn't seem to matter. Somehow the circle of complicity keeps growing and growing. It started with the director, and then the producer, and then their parents, and the rest of the people who worked on the movie, the cinematographer who shot this mess, the choreographer who taught these children adult dance moves, the editors who spent hours editing this film and didn't quit in disgust, Netflix for making it available to anybody at any time, and now the critics who are dishonestly praising this movie. You are all guilty of exploiting these kids to further your own agendas. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. I know you're not, but you should be. But what about the person responsible for all of this? Well, she's doing pretty well for herself. She's already making another movie, this time in Hollywood, and she's currently writing another movie for another streaming service. She's now rich and famous all over the world. She's also the darling of movie critics everywhere, and Hollywood loves her. She now has everything she could ever want, and all she had to do was exploit some little girls.